All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday Innovation Stage Online. Today we have Certified Languages International who has sponsored this webinar. So before we begin, I want to thank the company Certified Languages International for sponsoring, and I want to thank Scott Ostermiller for being here and doing this with us today. Before we jump into the topic, like always, if you have any questions or comments throughout this webinar, please make sure you put those into the chat box. We'll be answering some questions towards the end of the webinar, as well as a reminder that this is being recorded and will be posted shortly after, I want to say either tomorrow or Friday, on our shop page for you to come back and rewatch after. But with that, joining us, as I mentioned, we have Scott Ostermiller, the SVP of Sales at Certified Languages International, who has decided to join us today and talk about debunking misconceptions of remote interpreting in debt collections. So I'm going to hand it over to him to get us started. There will be a poll sometime during this presentation, so get ready for that. And Scott, the floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks, Bruno. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. As Bruno said, thanks for taking time to listen to us today and to learn more about language interpretation within this industry. I hope you'll find this educational. Just to start, I'll start with a little introduction. As Bruno said, Scott Ostermiller, VP of Sales. The company's name is Certified Languages International. I'll tell you a little bit more about the company. But about myself, I have been in the language interpretation industry for my entire career. So I'm an expert in all things interpreting and have spent 25 years doing this with different companies. And I love it. I'm passionate about it. I speak a couple languages and just am really, I love what we do and how we're changing the world and helping do that. So here's how we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so. Basically, I want to try to provide some education to all of you that, no strings attached, just teach you about the interpreting agency, teach you about some vocabulary, and we'll go through some common misconceptions. And of course, we're going to end with just a little bit more about certified languages and what makes us unique in this space. And I hope that we can explain to you how, as I understand it, CLI is the only company that has sponsored ACA and that is a member of ACA, the only language company. And I'll explain a little bit more about why that is and why, what we do in this industry. Okay, so a little bit about this company, Certified Languages International. We have been in business for 29 years. Within this industry, we are the fourth largest provider of telephone interpreting services. We are known in the industry for the number of languages that we're able to provide on any given day. And last year, the number was actually 245 languages, and it just changes year to year. That's a really big number in this industry, and it's one of the things that we're known for. We are a woman-owned and woman-managed business. We're a debt-free organization with no outside investment. And why that matters or what that means is that we make decisions based on how we operate within this industry without private equity, nothing against private equity, but without any overseeing people making us make decisions based on profitability. We do the things that we do because we love helping non-English speaking people. And we get to make those business decisions for us and how we choose to. We are headquartered in Portland, Oregon, and we have a second fully redundant co-location in Phoenix, Arizona. Okay, so kind of moving into a little bit of the education on the language industry. So this slide just speaks to what the need is in the United States. 68 million people in the United States speak a language other than English in their home. Within our country, census tells us that there are 350 total languages represented. And of course, they're located all throughout the United States. Evenly dispersed as is the general population. So while Spanish is the primary or the largest language that's provided, it's not just Spanish. Um, this is, again, from census data, a representation of how many people in the United States speak these other top 6 or 7 languages. 3.5 million people in the country speak Chinese as their first language, and you can see these others represented. So Spanish is the majority, but it's not the only thing. Okay, let's talk about how the need for language services, or really it's how the population of non-English speaking people has changed over time. So in the 1980 census, 1 in 10 people, or 23 million people, spoke a language other than English in the United States. And if you fast forward 40 years to 2019, that increased from 1 in 10 to 1 in 5. And as I mentioned, that's about 68 million people. So as it has grown, it's likely to continue to grow. Okay, Bruno, I think we mentioned there's going to be a poll question, so I think we can go ahead and launch that anytime. But let me just tell you what we're after. It just helps me to know where your company is, if you know, with respect to language services. So the question is, what might be preventing you from adopting language services? And feel free to answer anytime. Maybe you don't see the value in it. We're going to talk about that today. I hope that I could help you see the value through this presentation. Maybe you don't or haven't because it isn't seen as a requirement. Perhaps the conception is that it's too expensive. And the last one is maybe your company already has an interpreting service. In which case just want today I will provide more context of things to look for in selecting the right agency and vendor. So we'll give you just a couple more seconds there. Bruno, we think we're good?
All right, I think we're good.
Great, thanks everybody. Okay, let's move into just agreeing on how we within the language industry refer to various terms. And so maybe this is for your knowledge, and there's just a lot of so here's where we have landed in the industry on how to use these different titles and labels. So interpretation, that describes spoken communication. So the service that's provided in having a conversation, a real-time conversation, if you will, with an interpreter, somebody facilitating the conversation. So obviously the individuals that do that are called interpreters. And then translation, actually, we use that now to refer to written documents. So you translate a document from English to Spanish, you interpret a conversation. And we actually have used that same thing to describe the individuals, that they're translations experts or translators. And then lastly, the other one that is bilingual individuals. So bilingual, people who are bilingual aren't used to facilitate a conversation between 2 languages. They're just an individual that happens to speak multiple languages. So I'm bilingual, I'm not an interpreter. And so if I could answer a call in English and I could answer a call in Spanish, but I don't facilitate the conversation between them. So hopefully that helps. And it's okay if you mix that up because we all do. And anyway, just wanted to kind of put that out there. Myth versus reality. So let's talk about some misconceptions within that we often hear from companies as they consider whether they should have an interpretation partner. So the first one is we hear people say, well, it just takes too long, right? We're a call center company and we're monitoring our agents to the second, and we're really sensitive to cost and just efficiency. So the reality is last year, Certified Languages handled 6 million conversations that were equal to about 70 million minutes. And we did that on average last year. We connected interpreters within 23 seconds. So the reality is it takes less than 30 seconds to connect an interpreter to your phone call. The second myth is that people will say, we don't think the interpreters can actually understand the complexity of our calls. In this industry, we get it. There's lots of acronyms, there's lots of internal nomenclature, and it can be complicated. The reality of that is, by selecting the right partner who knows how to hire qualified, experienced interpreters, that isn't the case at all. The interpreters are very adept at handling this type of conversation. And as a matter of fact, the more we do it, the better the interpreter gets. And they'll learn things on every call, and they just continue to improve that. And the last one is, some people think it's too expensive. So specific to certified languages, and actually most of the quality companies in this industry, there are no monthly minimums. What that means is that you pay for exactly the number of minutes that are interpreted for you in that month. If you never use an interpreting service like ours in the month, you don't get an invoice. There are no annual fees. And on average, the cost for interpreters is, for on-demand interpreting, is less than $1 a minute. Okay. All right, so I want to talk about, I mentioned already the necessity and value of using professional interpreters. And so this slide, and what I'll just speak to, is what the advantages of that are. And I'm doing this to help you know, as you're looking for a vendor and or considering who you're working with, these are questions to ask. These are things to ensure are in place. So the first reason that you want to do this is for accuracy, obviously. If the interpreter is not qualified to handle a certain type of conversation, you will suffer in terms of the effectiveness of that conversation, and the accuracy suffers. So it matters, professional interpreters. The way that we prevent that, and is that when done right, companies like ours, we only hire and work with interpreters that are already experienced professional interpreters. And believe it or not, that is no longer the norm. There are a lot of emerging or there are a lot of companies in this industry that are moving into developing nations, and they're creating interpreters. So they're finding people that speak their primary language or their native tongue, and they're saying, well, you know some English, and we'll pay you X cents per minute to handle these calls. And they're trying to build interpreters. While there is a place for that, and while that it isn't likely the right solution for your type of conversations. So for us, once we find interpreters that are already professional interpreters that have training and experience, then we perform the background checks on them, and 100% of them are then tested. Even interpreters even interpreters that have been professional interpreters that may have certifications doesn't necessarily mean they pass in a test, an interpreting test, proficiency. So all of this helps. The next thing to consider is the agency providing the assurance that you need that all of the data is kept secure and that the conversations are kept confidential? So does the company have the ability to record calls, to not record calls? And what happens to those recordings if they are recorded? And how is data being stored? In what nations is it being transmitted? Those are all questions and things to think about. And the last one is increased efficiency. So what that means is, if you have worked with an interpreter, you'll understand that the better the interpreter is, the faster the conversation moves. If an interpreter is new and they're struggling and they are stopping to ask clarification, or even if the non-English speaking person or senses that they aren't really understanding, they'll pause them. And this just slows things down. It costs you more money. And yeah, it just makes for longer calls, less efficient. So all of this to say, having the right interpreter makes a huge difference. Okay, let's talk about, so why? Why should you hire a language service partner? Or why establish this? So the first one is ROI. We've talked about this already. If 1 in 5 people in the United States prefer to speak in a language other than English, obviously there is a return on investment if you're able to have more conversations with customers. The second one is a competitive advantage. We actually have had a partner within ACA tell us that as they were bidding on an RFP, or as they were bidding on a solicitation, that they were able to cite that they had a partner to provide language interpretation. It gave them, they believed, a competitive advantage in that opportunity, to show the vendor that they had that they could speak to all of the people no matter the language. The next one is people are coming to expect this. And so if you don't do it, it's common and becoming more common for clients to request it. So, better to be ahead of that. And the last thing is it's the right thing to do. And so to this, I would say, like, I'll just tell you a story. I have a member of my team who who speaks Vietnamese, and her parents are Vietnamese, and her parents do not speak English. She was raised in a household, and this is very common, where she was put in a position that she had to interpret all of the conversations for her parents. So imagine having to go to a doctor's appointment and sit next to your mom or your dad as a 10 or 12-year-old child and interpret the conversation, the private, sensitive conversations that happen between us and a doctor. Or imagine the same thing over the telephone with a collector or with any call related to personal finance. And having to do that through one of our children, we believe that this is the type of dignity that we are responsible to provide people. That isn't something I would ever want to have to do with my children. And I'm sure we could all relate to that. So it's the right thing to do, because the alternative creates complexities within families. Okay, so on a happier note, let's talk about how it works, because it's really simple. So I'm going to just explain the 2 typical call flows. The first one is an inbound call to you. So you have a person that calls into your contact center that doesn't speak English. They connect to your collector, or they connect to your agent, and it becomes clear you need an interpreter on the call. At that point, your collector will dial the telephone number to certified languages. The phone is then answered, and we have a couple different mechanisms for this. There's an automated mechanism, and there's live agents. And so you may get this AI agent, and it says, who are you, or you identify, and then you just ask what language. I'm speaking Spanish, or I'm whatever. If you don't know, at any time you can ask for a live operator. That live operator comes on the phone, helps you identify what language is needed, and then they will bring the interpreter into the phone call. And again, that all happens generally in less than 30 seconds. Once you're all connected, that live operator would then disconnect, or would then drop off the call, and you're having a conversation with your client in any language, and you've got the interpreter on the phone. The other scenario that's also very common is one where you're making outbound calls. And so if you keep track in your system and you happen to know what language the person speaks that you're dialing, it's just as easy. Your collector, your agent can call us, and you can actually get the interpreter on the line first. So we need an interpreter who speaks Tagalog, that interpreter joins the call, and then you make that call out to your client, to that person, and they answer, and then the conversation goes on. So that's it. With respect to AI agents or live operators, those are all conversations that we can have with you. We help you make the right decision there, and there are pros and cons. And again, you guys are all in the call center industry, so you understand that. So with that, let's just hear a quick demo of how this sounds with utilizing this automated call flow that's really common and works great. So you may need to turn your speakers up just a little bit. It's just a call recording, and it's just a couple seconds.
Thank you for calling. What language do you need?
Spanish.
Just to check, you said Spanish, right?
Yes.
Got it. Can I have the department name?
Case management.
Do you need a third-party dial-out?
No, thank you.
Great. Connecting you to your Spanish interpreter now.
Oh, geez, I stepped on it. So when it asks for, I forgot the question that it asked, the department name or whatever it asks there, that is a customized question. So we can gather for you whatever data you need gathered. So you may say, we want you to ask for what the client name is, or we want you to ask for the department code, or whatever that is. You tell us what data you want gathered. We ask that at the front of every call, and then we report all of that back to you at the end of the month. So then you can do your internal accounting however you need to with that data. So that's a simple demo of how easy that is. And all that would have happened at the end of that is a Spanish, you would have heard a short hold, generally, again, less than 20 seconds. At the end of that, the Spanish interpreter would have been patched into the call. And that's it. You're off and going. Okay. Oh, I am so sorry. So sorry again. This is the last slide. And this is the one I told you about that just sort of says certified languages is unique in this industry. We have a long history of working within the finance segment. Last year, specific to finance and collections, our company interpreted 4.5 million minutes in this industry alone. So when I talked about how interpreters can learn and improve and learn acronyms, 4.5 million minutes of interpreting this type of call last year alone. We currently have 10 customers that are members of ACA. Pen Credit, we appreciate if you guys are on. We appreciate you letting us use your name and logo. A great partner, and was one of the introductions that we had to ACA. And lastly, I mentioned one of the things to look for in selecting a vendor. Providers that know how to handle data privacy and security, we shine. We are very cautious with our approach to offshore interpreting. We are extremely cautious knowing how to handle data and keeping it all secure. We have, knock on wood, we have no breaches, and we have nothing in the past related to data breaches. And it's because we take all of that really seriously. So with that, we end on the same picture of me that we started. So my email address is on the screen. Please screenshot it, take a picture of it, or jot it down. You are welcome to reach out to me with any questions. We are also going to be reaching out to you. And so you'll get an email from us asking to continue the conversation. This will be done by a member of my team who works exclusively within the finance segment, and she is also an expert on all of these things. We are offering an incentive that if you schedule with us and have that introductory phone call during the month or before the end of month of March, we will waive any customer setup fees. You don't have to have executed a contract. You don't, just meet with us and we'll waive that $500 setup fee for you. I think that's everything. Be looking for emails from us. And oh yeah, with respect to the Amazon gift card that some of you may be expecting, we will process, ACA will send us the participant list. We'll check to see which of those are ACA members, and we hope to process all of that by the end of this week, but it might be early next week. You'll get that email notification in the email that you use to register. So Bruno, welcome back.
Thanks. There are a few questions in the chat that I think we have some time to answer quickly if, let me see if I can pull this up. Here we go. So there's one all the way at the beginning.
Yeah,
from-
I'll read it. So for
Right.
our business, is it possible to create a direct line or direct extension for the languages we most frequently encounter, like our top 3 or top 5 list? That's a really good question. As I mentioned, there are lots of call flows that we can work with you on that make the most sense for you. And the answer to that is yes. So we can set up an IVR where you can press 1 for Spanish and press 2 for Mandarin, and we can do that based on what you know your top 5 or whatever languages to be. And then it's press 6 for everything else. That is fully customizable. It's a really astute question. It's fully customizable. And yep, so let's see.
All right. And then I think the last 2 are towards the bottom there in the chat.
Okay. So Jenny asked the question, can you confirm, are you interacting with an AI agent or a live agent? And the answer to that is both. Some of that is customer preference, and some of that is depending on the, the way the call is being handled or being routed. If there is, so in the case that it's an AI agent, there is always the option to go to a live agent with our company. And if at any time the AI agent doesn't understand the language or it gets confused, it will automatically route to a live agent. And as of today, we still allow our customers to select if they don't want AI, though, I mean, we all know the pros and cons of that. How does your service deal with the different dialects from different nations? Great question. Again, this is all in the way that we approach this is about screening qualified interpreters. And it is often, it's really hard to be perfect in this, meaning it's about having a large base of interpreters that are all qualified and have all been tested and screened. And with respect to dialects, this is just something that interpreters face every day. And the more seasoned they are, the more proficient they are at dealing with dialects. And if you have traveled into other nations, you can see examples of this with children. When you speak to a child that, let's say somebody who's 5 or 6 years old or something like that, and you have an accent, they'll struggle to understand you. But the longer that we communicate in our language, the more proficient we are at understanding dialects and accents. Same with interpreting. They learn that over time and get better and better with it. And then Bruno put my email address. Thank you. Did I miss anything?
I think you covered it all.
We, again, really appreciate everybody's time, 79 people joining us today, which is really amazing. Thank you so much for being interested in learning about language services. We're going to email you. If you are not the person that makes these decisions, we would be honored to be introduced to them. It's often people who oversee customer service, contact centers. Those are often the buyers or the people that we work with the most. And so we'd appreciate those introductions. With that, Bruno, I don't have anything else.
All right, then very quick reminders that the recording will be posted on our website shortly, later today, if not tomorrow, and just keep an eye on your email for more communications from Certified Languages International. But with that, thank you all for joining. Again, thank you so much for sponsoring today's webinar. Thank you, Scott, for doing this. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, and have a great Wednesday.
Thanks so much.